Everybody knows that E-drums are infinitely better than acoustic drums. Okay, obviously not, but for some people, myself included, E-drums are simply the best way to go. But if you don't do this right, they're going to end up sounding and feeling like garbage, which isn't good for anybody. So in this video, we're going to talk about the hardware, the software, the best practices, as well as how I turned this cheap used acoustic kit into a killer E-kit without breaking the bank. So to start out, I want to give you a quick demo of how this E-kit sounds so that you can understand the context around what I'll be talking about in this video. So before we get into the how, I really quickly want to talk about the why. I don't talk about it a ton in these videos, but drums were my first love and are still my favorite instrument to play, even though I picked up on some other skills over the years. So believe me when I say that I was resistant to E-drums for a long time. But when I was in high school, I was getting into music production and very quickly became fascinated with everything that E-drums could do in terms of making music. Nowadays, we have some incredible sounding drum modules as well as drum virtual software. You can send and receive MIDI. You don't have to worry about mic bleed. But if you do want mic bleed, some of the software even features that, which is pretty fun. You can use presets and not have to mess with mic positioning if you don't want to. And obviously you don't have to worry about bothering your family or neighbors with noisy acoustic drums. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean to take away from the engineering experience of miking actual drums. It's just that in my case, I'm getting a lot more out of having an electric kit, and I know a ton of other people who are in the same situation. Now I'm going to quickly walk you through the hardware and software of my setup. It's about as budget as you can get while still feeling and sounding premium. First off, I have this cheap acoustic drum set that I got used off of Marketplace for $125, but you can find kits like this even cheaper than that. I really liked the look of this one, and it happened to belong to a friend from high school who I actually helped set this up at their house back in the day. So I got that kit and replaced the heads with these mesh Remo silent stroke heads. Then I bought some dual zone internal drum triggers from this guy on eBay. They were super easy to install and I didn't have to damage the shells to do so, which is great. Then I have these lemon cymbals, which are much more affordable than the Rollins, but still do a great job. I believe this is a 12-inch dual zone hi-hat, two 13-inch dual zone crashes, and then a 15-inch 3-zone ride. The zones are important because you want to get a different sound out of the edge versus the bow of the cymbal, and the 3-zone ride even has a zone for the bell of the cymbal. Then the drum triggers and cymbal triggers are all plugged into a Roland TD-17, which I love. I think I picked it up for $400 used. If you're just planning on using this setup in the studio, you can definitely get a cheaper module than this, as long as it sends MIDI to your computer somehow. By the way, if you're getting any value out of this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more like this. So from there, I'm sending all of this over USB MIDI into my DAW running Addictive Drums 2, which I highly recommend. Whether you're using E-drums or even just playing drum parts on a MIDI keyboard, it's awesome. I actually grabbed a free demo of Addictive Drums 2 just to try it out, and it's very limited but gives you a great idea of how the software works. But instead of spending a huge chunk of money on a full version of the software, you can actually just keep the free version and then add drum packs to it as you need them. Basically, these drum packs come with full drum kits with shells and cymbals and everything like that. From there, you can either use the included presets or you can Frankenstein together your own custom drum kits. You can even adjust things like mic positions, dynamics, room, EQ, other effects, and you can even send out each piece of the kit to a separate output in your DAW, which is what I always do. I sound like I'm being sponsored by XLN Audio when I talk about Addictive Drums, but really, it's just that awesome. By the way, there are affiliate links down in the description if you want to check out any of the hardware for yourself or even Addictive Drums 2. So, fun fact, I offer session drums, guitar, and keys services, as well as mixing and mastering, and I love it. So if any of that interests you, it's entirely remote, super affordable, and super easy to use. You just tell me what you need, send me your track, and I will send you a finished product. There's a link in the description that'll take you to my services, and if you send me a message there saying that you came from this video, I'll throw in a special discount just to say thanks for watching. Now let's talk about how to get the absolute best out of an eDrum setup. Firstly, whether you have a full-size kit like this or maybe a more compact one, you want to make sure and arrange and space everything out in a way that feels natural for your playing style. I've seen many people set up their eDrums as condensed as possible, which in theory may sound like the thing to do, but then when you get back behind an acoustic kit, your muscle memory is all messed up. Next, you need to know how to dial in the trigger settings on your drum module. I've seen a ton of people mess this up, especially when it comes to drum sensitivity. It's important that you get this right, because if your sensitivity is too high, then even your soft drum hits are not only going to be louder, but they're also going to trigger the actual sample of a loud hit. And if your sensitivity is set too low, then you may hit the drum really hard and it could sound like a ghost note. Then I would encourage you to get really familiar with whatever software you're using, whether it's Addictive Drums 2 or another virtual instrument, and make any small adjustments to ensure that the kit sounds and feels as natural as possible with the tools available to you. Addictive Drums actually has built-in presets for pretty much every drum module, so that should prevent you from having to do any weird mapping if your tom is making the sound of a ride or something like that. And this may be an obvious one, but even when you're just tracking drums, you want to make sure that the kit pieces are panned relative to where they are in front of you, and I normally keep the kick and snare center. But here's what most people get wrong about eDrums. They're not acoustic drums, and they're not supposed to be. Imagine if I, as a pianist, sat in front of my Yamaha CP73 keyboard back there and thought, wow, this sounds amazing, feels impressive, but it sucks because it doesn't feel like my grandma's old upright that I have in my living room. But Me Mom's piano is also extremely heavy, only plays one sound, doesn't send MIDI, it hardly stays in tune, and I can't plug in headphones when I want to practice quietly. The CP73 and my eDrums are not trying to make acoustic instruments obsolete. They're simply tools that can be used to produce the sound of acoustic instruments in a variety of ways, with some added benefits which we've already talked about in this video. So whether you're being forced to play behind an e-kit at a venue, or maybe you think that eDrums are the best option for your studio, the best thing you can do for yourself is to change your mindset. Instead of constantly thinking about all the different ways that acoustic drums are better, try thinking about how you can use this tool to produce some killer drum sounds in your studio. And it does help that the companies behind these electronic instruments are constantly looking for ways to close the gap when it comes to their instruments lacking acoustic feel. Sure, the built-in sounds in most drum modules are not great, but software like Addictive Drums 2 is extremely affordable, and some may disagree, but it sounds just as good as a mic'd up acoustic kit. I've also noticed this funny situation where eDrum companies are trying to sound more like acoustic drums with more nuance and more imperfections, while acoustic drum recordings are trending towards sounding more electronic, less dynamic, and quantized. All of that to say, if you're interested or have already started digging into eDrums, dive headfirst and don't let the naysayers discourage you from it. To be fair, a lot of those people just aren't aware of how good these things can sound with today's technology. I would love to hear your thoughts on eDrums in the comments down below, even if you completely disagree with everything that I just said. After you do that, click this video right here because I think you'll like it. And as always, thanks for hanging out.